Canadian patent number 399, filed in 1871, describes improvements on a machine for removing snow from railroad tracks. The inventor is listed as J.W. Elliott, and his occupation as a dentist. The drawings show a wheel with flat arms mounted on a horizontal shaft, but Elliott never built it. He couldn't find investors. The patent lapsed. 13 years later, Canadian patent number 18506 was filed by Orange Jewel. Same basic idea, but Jewel owned a flour mill in Orangeville, Ontario, and he understood something about grinding. He added pivoting steel-cutting blades in front of the fan wheel. He built working models. He tested them on sand dunes. The Leslie brothers, John and Edward, machinists from Orangeville. They show up in the records constantly after 1884. Jewel doesn't. He sold them the rights and mostly vanished from the story. Why? The standard answer is they disagreed about money. Jewel felt cheated. That's the version in most railroad histories. But I went through the patent records, and something doesn't add up. Canadian patent number 24429, filed July 5, 1886. It's owned by Orange Jewel, but the inventor's signature is Edward Leslie. The documents are all signed by Leslie. Jewel owns it. Leslie invented it. What kind of arrangement is that? Nobody seems to know. The Leslies moved to Paterson, New Jersey that same year. They formed the Rotary Steam Shovel Manufacturing Company. What does it build? They contracted with Cook Locomotive Works to build the machines, and they got rich. Orange Jewel went back to designing snowplows. By 1889, he had a completely different machine, the Jewel Centrifugal Snow Excavator, with a cone-shaped auger screw. It worked fine on flat ground. In April 1890, the railroad staged a head-to-head competition at Alpine Tunnel, Colorado, on the Denver, Leadville, and Gunnison line. Narrow gauge, steep grades, the kind of snow that people called Sierra cement, because it wasn't really snow anymore. It was wet, dense, and it would stop anything. The Leslie Rotary won. The Jewel excavator couldn't push the snow far enough from the tracks. It got stuck. Orange Jewel built 11 excavators between 1890 and 1892. Then he stopped. His company disappeared from the records. John Samuel Leslie died in 1939 in Paterson, New Jersey. His obituary claimed he invented the rotary snowplow. You'll read that the Transcontinental Railroad was completed in May 1869 at Promontory Point, Utah, and that everything was fine after that. It wasn't. The first surveyors of the Central Pacific Railroad looked at the Sierra Nevada and decided the snows could be handled with existing equipment. They were wrong about almost everything. They planned to use wedge plows, massive V-shaped rams called bucker plows, pushed by teams of locomotives. The first one, built in Sacramento, weighed 12 tons. They increased it to 19 tons almost immediately because the lighter version kept jumping the tracks. The bucker plow theory was simple. You back up the whole train, plow plus 6 to 12 locomotives, to get a running start. Then you charge the drift at 30 to 40 miles an hour and hope the momentum carries you through. If it works, you do it again for the next drift. If it doesn't work, and it often didn't, you're stuck. The locomotives behind the plow can't see anything. The men standing on top of the plow are shouting orders down to the engineers, but visibility in a blizzard is 50 feet at best. Charles McGlashan, editor of the Truckee Republican, rode on a bucker plow in January 1880. His account, A Fearful Ride on a Snowplow, describes the plow being left on the tracks while the locomotives backed up to refuel. In the dark and the storm, a fresh train of locomotives came barreling down the line and slammed into the stranded plow. McLashan was thrown between the engines and the snow wall. He described himself as helpless as a straw in a threshing machine. He survived, inches from the wheels. Engine crews called this work a suicide run. The bucker plows derailed constantly when they hit wet, packed snow. The leading edge would climb over the drift instead of cutting through it. The whole procession, plow and locomotives, would leave the rails. Men were thrown, equipment was damaged, and every time they stopped, the snow kept falling. By the winter of 1874, the Central Pacific was running 6 to 12 locomotives behind each bucker plow just to keep moving over Donner Pass. They had men stationed on top of the plows in blizzards, shouting orders through the screaming wind, visibility nearly zero. The plow superintendent, Nate Webb, had been battling Sierra winters for 7 years. He'd seen storms that buried trains for days. The railroad built snow sheds, wooden tunnels over the tracks to protect them from drifts and avalanches. Eventually, 40 miles of snow sheds covered the most exposed sections. The sheds cost $75,000 per mile in 1870s dollars. They caught fire regularly. Avalanches crushed them. Workers assigned to maintain the sheds went months without seeing sunlight. The San Francisco Chronicle called them the Mole People. And still, the trains got stuck. The first full-scale Leslie rotary was tested at the Canadian Pacific's Parkdale Yards during the winter of 1883. The trial reports say it threw snow and ice more than 300 feet. The Canadian Pacific contributed a boiler for the prototype. They wanted it to work. On March 28, 1885, Cook Locomotive Works tested the first American-built rotary on the tracks of the Buffalo Creek Railroad. Leslie personally operated the plow. It worked. Union Pacific bought the first 3 production units in 1887. By 1905, the Leslies had sold 62 plows, 64 if you count 2 export models. American Locomotive Company bought the patent and built 67 more between 1905 and 1937. The last commercially produced steam rotaries came from Lima Hamilton in 1949 and 1950. The basic design: a large, circular cutting wheel, 11 to 12 feet in diameter, mounted on a horizontal shaft at the front of the machine. The wheel has pivoting steel blades, knives in the original patents, that reverse position automatically when the direction of rotation changes. Behind the cutting wheel, in the same housing, is a throwing wheel that catches the chopped snow and ejects it through a chute above the blade assembly. The chute can be aimed left or right. The whole assembly is powered by a steam engine inside the plow's body. Not a locomotive, the rotary is not self-propelled. 1 to 4 locomotives push it from behind, but the steam inside the plow only drives the cutting wheel. A crew of 4 operates the machine. The pilot sits at the front, just behind the cutting wheel, with the only clear forward view. He controls the whole operation with whistles and coded signals. Behind him, an engineer controls the wheel speed. At the back, 2 firemen feed the boiler. The original rotaries weighed around 100,000 pounds. By the 1920s, they were over 200,000 pounds. Union Pacific's 90081, built at their Omaha shops in 1966, weighs 367,400 pounds. That's over 183 tons. Its cutting wheel is 12 feet in diameter. It can revolve at 150 revolutions per minute. The chute can throw snow hundreds of feet from the track. Working inside a steam rotary was brutal. The cutting wheel vibrated constantly. The exhaust noise was deafening. The plow had no suspension. Every bump in the track went straight through the crew. The pilot at the front was inches from tons of spinning steel, looking into a wall of white, trying to spot rocks or debris that could destroy the blades. Progress was slow, 1 to 2 miles per hour through heavy snow, sometimes foot by foot through avalanche deposits. The machines could throw a 25-pound rock safely out the discharge chute, but anything bigger would damage the blades. Telegraph poles, trees, ice boulders, all of it mixed into avalanche snow, could stop a rotary cold. In 1 hour, a rotary could do the same work as a bucker plow could do in a day. That's from the promotional materials. I've never seen that claim independently verified, but the railroads bought them anyway. The common story about the rotary snowplow is that it was an instant success. That's not quite right. Leslie Rotary, number 5, was the first unit delivered to Central Pacific. It arrived at the end of the winter of 1887. Too late to clear the main line. They used it to plow out sidings and spurs in the truckee yards. There wasn't enough snow the following winter to warrant serious use. The winter of 1889 was different. After several dry years, Northern California ranchers and farmers were desperate for precipitation. Reno hit an all-time record low of 19 degrees below zero on January 8, 1890. 2 weeks later, the storm started. They didn't stop. By early January, nearly 24 feet of snow had buried Truckee. Central Pacific had 1 rotary and 10 bucker plows. The rotary threw snow hundreds of feet into the air with such force that it broke the second-story windows of the Whitney Hotel 200 feet from the tracks. Residents boarded up their windows for protection. Days of time she's at this, it wasn't enough. On January 15th, a string of cattle cars from Nevada derailed inside a snow shed. The lurching train ripped out hundreds of support posts. The shed collapsed. The Great Snow Blockade of 1890 had begun. Central Pacific mobilized 1,600 additional men, many of them Chinese workers, plus a dozen more snowplows and 45 additional locomotives. Each bucker required 6 to 10 engines for power. The men worked rotating 8-hour shifts, 24 hours a day. The snow grew so deep that shovelers couldn't throw it over the banks anymore. They built wooden platforms into the snow walls, 3 tiers high, with a man on each tier, passing snow upward like a bucket brigade. At peak, 2,500 shovelers were fighting the storm. They earned $2 a day. Great! The rotary proved itself that winter. It could cut through 15-foot drifts that stopped everything else. But even the rotary was overwhelmed by constant storms that left a snowpack of 25 feet by month's end. Journalist William Jennings of the Philadelphia Press convinced Central Pacific officials to let him ride with a rotary. They hadn't gone far before an avalanche buried the plow. Every window in the cab shattered. Jennings bought a pair of skis, hired a guide, and traveled all night through crashing avalanches to escape the blockade. At Emerald Bay on Lake Tahoe's western shore, residents recorded fresh snow every day from December 2nd to January 30th, 40 feet total. The railroad was closed for 15 days. When it reopened on January 31st, another monster storm stalled over the region. February 16th. On March 6th, after more than 2 weeks of continuous blizzard, the line finally cleared. That winter, railroad crews fought a total of 776 inches of snowfall on Donner Summit, 65 feet. After 1890, the rotaries were proven technology. Southern Pacific started dismantling their snow sheds. At their maximum, 40 miles of sheds covered the tracks. By 1926, 30 miles remained. By 1952, only 5.5 miles. What could possibly go wrong? The city of San Francisco was Southern Pacific's flagship streamliner, Chicago to Oakland. 3 Alco PA diesel locomotives in daylight paint red, orange, and black. 15 cars, 226 passengers and crew. On January 13, 1952, the train sat in the snowshed-covered siding at Norden, California, near the summit of Donner Pass, waiting for the line to clear. The previous day's city had stalled in a snowslide 10 miles west of the summit. At 11:23 a.m., engineer Tom Sapinar eased the train out of Norden, taking the eastbound track west. The plan was to cross over to the westbound track at Crystal Lake, 15 miles down the mountain. The train crawled through cuts where the walls were canyon-high with snow. Near Yuba Pass, it was pushing through drifts 6 to 12 feet deep. Then it hit the avalanche. 2 slides had come down off Smart Ridge, one behind the other. The first slide the train punched through. The second, 10 to 18 feet high, stopped it cold. The diesel locomotives were buried to their cabs. Roadmaster J.T. Fulbright hiked half a mile through the blizzard to a call box at Yuba Pass. He reported the stranding. Relief rotaries and heavy mallet locomotives were dispatched from Norden and Emigrant Gap. The first rotary, pushed by cab forward 488 mallet number 4188, got within 2 car lengths of the streamliner. The rest had to be dug by hand. Then the avalanche hit. Engineer Roland Raymond of Sacramento was operating the rotary. He'd climbed down from the plow to survey the conditions. The slide buried him. Other crewmen saw it happen. They couldn't save him. It took days to find his body. The westbound tracks were now blocked on both sides of the stranded streamliner. The eastbound track was blocked too.
For the passengers, the first afternoon was an adventure. There was food.
The steam generators kept the heat running. A doctor on board, Walter Rohill of Middletown, Ohio, organized the response. A card expert gave bridge lessons. Someone organized a talent show. By Monday morning, the adventure was over. The diesel fuel ran out. The heat stopped. The pipes froze. The toilets backed up. The lights failed. The passengers sat in darkness, in a howling blizzard, temperature near zero, on a narrow shelf of track with a steep ravine below. The rescue effort involved rotary plows, cab-forward mallets, dog sled teams, Army weasels, those are tracked vehicles, Tucker snowcats, a Coast Guard helicopter drop, and Sierra Club volunteers on skis. On January 16th, the storm finally broke. The passengers hiked out along the tracks to Highway 40, which had been plowed to Yuba Pass. They were tobogganed and stretcher-carried to waiting vehicles. All 226 passengers and crew survived. The line wasn't fully operational until January 26th. Southern Pacific President Donald Russell was mortified. The company changed its protocols after that. Now, rotaries on Donner Pass always operate in pairs, one facing each direction, in case avalanches trap them. You'll read that rotary snowplows are obsolete technology, that they're only kept for emergencies, that modern equipment has mostly replaced them. This is technically true. In January 2003, the rotaries came out on Donner Pass. Heavy snow that winter closed Interstate 80 for extended periods. The Union Pacific line stayed open. The youngest rotaries on Donner Pass are over 80 years old. The 205 and 208, the ones stationed at Truckee, were originally steam-powered. They were converted to diesel-electric in the 1950s. They can only cut their own width. The newer units at Roseville have wings that pull in snow from several feet on either side. The maximum rotation of the fan is 150 revolutions per minute. The blades automatically adjust their angle to the snow conditions. The crew controls both the plow and the trailing locomotives from the cab. There's always more to find. The patent disputes, the missing photographs, the service logs that haven't been digitized, the crew rosters with names nobody remembers. The rotary snowplow was invented by a dentist who couldn't find investors, improved by a flour mill owner who got cheated out of the business, and built by two brothers whose company now makes valves. It saved the Transcontinental Railroad. It still saves it. When the snow gets deep enough, they bring out the rotaries. Union Pacific has 4 rotary units stationed near their northern Transcon route: Glendive, Montana; Minneapolis; Lincoln; and Alliance, Nebraska. The instructions say to use them only after dramatic snowfall events where volumes exceed the height of standard plow blades.